السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. MashaAllah, we welcome you yet again for another reading from Riyaadh Saaliheen under the chapter of visiting the sick. Alhamdulillah, on this day, Trinidad, the 9th of Arafah, MashaAllah, the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, the day of Arafah. Make special dua, inshallah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our fasting, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the full reward of fasting for this day, inshallah. May Allah reward those two who they wanted to fast, but for some reason they couldn't fast. And as we know in this time, there are a lot of people that are still sick. The last day we did some ahadith pertaining to something called niyaha, and we explained that niyaha is somebody wailing and crying uncontrollably. Sometimes people, they would actually rip up their clothing. Sometimes people, they would do the most, if you want to say ridiculous, so things that we wouldn't really think about, to sometimes express, as they would say, their grief. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has, he's shown us that crying, of course, is something that will occur, and we would all cry because of affection and connection that we have with each other. Even as in the case of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when one of his grandchild passed away, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he cried, and Sahaba, they were somewhat amazed as to, Ya Rasulullah, you also cry. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, yes, I cry because this is part of the compassion, the love, the mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed within us. At the same time, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he warns us, of the tongue, He says, وَلَكِنْ يُعَذِّبَ بِهَا أَوْ يَرْحَمُ وَأَشَارَ إِلَى لِسَانِهِ. So even though we may cry, we must be very aware of the expressions that we use. We must be very aware of the things that we say and our behavior. Niyaha and the prohibition of crying also is connected to those people who actually, they make some wasiyat and they make some will, or some arrangement for people to actually cry, And we know there are in some parts of the world, there are people who actually be paid to come and to actually wail and mourn and cry at your funeral. This is totally not permissible, in all the times that a person would, from a person dying until their bath and their ghusl and all of that, from the inception that the person dies, sometimes there are things that we might see that would be not of the best, this is why Imam Nawawi alayhi rahmah, he brings the chapter, he says, Babu fi kaffi amma yara min al-mayyit min makruhi. He says the chapter concerning withholding that which we would see, from the mayyit and the dead person, which is makruh, which is dislike, or it was not of the best, And the hadith goes like this, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And Abi Rafi'in aslama mawla Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam qala. Abi Rafi', the freed slave of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said that anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam qala. He says that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Man ghassala mayitan, fakatama alayhi, he says, whosoever gives a bath to a dead person, فَكَتَمَ عَلَيْهِ, and he conceals upon him, right? He غَفَرَ اللَّهُ لَهُ 40 مَرَّةً. He says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would forgive him 40 times. So the dead also has some right on us. One is that, mashallah, we should see to fulfill the rights of the dead, which is the ghusl, shrouding, and janaza and burial and all of that. And at the same time, there's even other hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells us in hadith, do not break the bones of the dead because it is like breaking the bones of the living. So we must deal with them with due care and caution and all of that. So within that process, there are some things that we might see sometimes, things from the ajaib, things that are way unusual sometimes that we would see, whether it's good or whether it's bad, whatever be the state, we have and we must, that the right to the deceased to conceal and to withhold those things that we see, right? Mashallah. Of course, that are those things of the makruh, right? Of more of a negative dislike, that kind of thing. If we see, mashallah, a person dies and we experience a very sweet smell, right? Then of course a sweet smell is something that is very, loved, and mashallah, this is something, very strange, but it's a good sign, mashallah. So we should tell people about it, of the good, right? Now, Allah forbid, on the other hand, the person might pass away sometimes under the most, severe of conditions, sometimes, na'udhu billah, just by our eyes seeing, we could only judge from what we see there, a lot of pain, or maybe a horrible death, we don't go and actually describe it to other people, so that, na'udhu billah, they might ascribe some, negativity towards that deceased person. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the time of bathing the deceased is when the deceased, there's nothing hiding, everything is removed, right? Of course, there's the satar that's covered, but everything is open. There's nothing that's actually hidden until that point. So this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would say, man ghassala. At the time of bathing the person, we might see something that maybe we didn't see before, right? And it's negative, or it's not of the best, then we should conceal it, right? And in concealing it, it doesn't mean to say to someone, look, I saw so and so, but don't tell anybody, that's between me and you. Concealing it means that it doesn't leave your lips, right? And, apart from this, there are a lot more, rights of the deceased, inshallah. But this is just one that Imam Nawawi alayhi rahmah chooses to bring here, inshallah. So we should, inshallah, be very careful. And if we ever fall in this circumstance, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to conceal those negative things or makruh things that we would see. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bless you and your family, inshallah, on this day of Arafah, inshallah. Remember me, remember Ali Kram and all the other presenters, inshallah, and your du'as. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bless us. May Allah remove all the harms. May Allah alleviate the pains and the tests of those who have been tested at this time, inshallah. And on behalf of the management and staff of Ali Kram, we wish you Eid Mubarak, Eidul Mubarak, inshallah. Taqabbal Allahu minna wa minkum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us all, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Don't forget, tomorrow again, inshallah, please log in and join us, inshallah, for our reading of Riyadh Saaliheen. Wassalam.